It keeps you from getting lost or straying off course. And of course, we want to stay on course. It shows where you've been and where you're going. Everyone in the meeting needs access to an agenda. Now, frequently what happens is the agenda gets mailed out with the call to the meeting, with the minutes and so forth, so that everybody can see it ahead of time and know what's coming up. All right, now we're going to talk about that MRUN that I was mentioning. That's the Simplified Standard Order of Business. You will find this in Roberts in Brief. Miriam, I think, is going to tell you more about the difference in the two books that we propose to use. And the more simplified one is MRUN, M-R-U-N. M stands for the reading and approval of the minutes of the last meeting. R stands for the hearing of reports of officers and committees. U stands for unfinished business. Notice it is not old business. It is unfinished business. And N for new business. And the standard order of business means that this is the order in which things are done on and placed on your agenda most of the time. You'll see that the flow is from past to present to future. The past being represented by the minutes. The reports are kind of in between, what happened in between the minutes. In between the meetings. Unfinished business and new business represent the present and the future, what your plans will be. Now, an agenda, on the other hand, is a specific plan for each meeting. So an agenda for January will look somewhat different from your agenda for February. It will have some of the same elements, but there will be some different things underneath, probably. For instance, you will probably have call to order on your agenda. You may have some opening ceremonies that you do. If so, it's good to remember that God goes before country. So if you have a prayer and invocation, you would do that before your patriotic things that you might do. And if you do both the national anthem and the pledge to the flag, the anthem would go first. Next, you might have on your agenda the quorum. As you know, hopefully, the quorum is the minimum number of members that must be present at your meeting so that you can validly have business. There would be either a silent roll call or a verbal roll call, actually calling out people's names by the number or by the secretary so that you know how many voting members you do have to see if you do have a quorum. So that might be on your agenda. Then you get to the purple ones, the ones from the standard order of business, the reading and approval of minutes, the reports of officers first, and then committee chairs. You'd have your standing committee reports first. Now, if you're wondering what's a standing committee, you look in your bylaws. And if there are committees listed in your bylaws, those are your standing committees. Your ad hoc or special committees would be ones that would be called together for a specific purpose, and then they would go out of existence. Unfinished business, for instance, a motion that you didn't get to at the last meeting. Oops, and then new business. Afterwards, you might have announcements, remind people when the next meeting is, for instance, and you'd have adjournment. And that might be what your agenda would look like. There could be other variations as well. Do we have any questions, Josh, so far? I'm neglected to say that you may put questions in the chat if you'd like, and we will either get to them way later or we will get to them if they're burning questions right away. And Josh,
there's no questions so far.
Okay, good. We'll just keep going then. Whoops, there we go. So after the agenda, you want to be thinking about a script if you're the president. So what is a script? We'll talk about that. It's a text that contains every word that the chair plans to say during the meeting. Now that sounds kind of heavy, but it's a wonderful thing. It gives the correct wording for each part of the agenda, and it's a real benefit to the chair because it makes the meeting run smoothly. You sound very professional. You will have the wording correct because you've had a chance to look it up and write it down. It will give you as chair more confidence, and therefore the people that you are serving will be more confident in you. So it's totally win-win. It's usually prepared by the chair themselves or the parliamentarian if they have one. You may want to give a copy to your secretary to help with the minutes. And the beauty of this is that the first script might take you a little bit of time to prepare, but after that, just save it in your computer and you can use it as a template for future meetings. You know, good old copy paste. Okay, well, I'll do a sample here for you. You take the agenda that you have set up already, put it on its own screen, and then insert in underneath each of those titles, each of the topics, what it is exactly that you want to say. Now, you'll have some other words and some other things you'll want to say, but you want to script this as well as you can. So under call to order, the chair will script. The meeting will come to order. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Save the Salamander Society. I am Pat Reymann, your chair. And do introduce yourself, because you may think that everybody knows who you are, but there might be somebody who doesn't. Then we're going to go into some other things. Please stand if you are able for the national anthem, which will be sung by Ginny Altman. I didn't ask Ginny if it was okay to say her name, but I think she wouldn't mind. She does a beautiful job. Then the next thing is the quorum. So under quorum, you'll say, would the secretary please call the roll? ... means we'll pause. And when the secretary's done, you say, thank you. There is a quorum present. And you know that because the secretary has told you, or you can has indicated that you have enough people present. Okay, next we get to the minutes. The next item of business is the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the last meeting were sent to you. Are there any corrections? Notice, please, we do not say, are there any additions or corrections? We just say, are there any corrections? And then, let's see, are you able to see that whole screen, or are the pictures getting in their way? It's okay. All right, thank you. I got a thumbs up from David. Thank you. Now, if someone suggests a correction, the chair can ask, is there any objection to making that correction? ... You're waiting. Hearing no objection, that correction is made. Are there further corrections? And then when you get to the point where nobody says anything, then you say, okay, hearing no more corrections, the minutes are approved. The big book, Robert's the big book, suggests the minutes are approved as printed or as corrected. The little book, Robert's in brief, says you can stop right after the minutes are approved. So take your pick, whatever you'd like to do. Now, this is where people trip up. And this is why you want to have a script, or one of many reasons why you want to have one. You never vote to approve the minutes. Even if somebody has said, I move to approve the minutes with commendation or whatever, you just thank them and you just go back to your script. You may need to vote on corrections if they're controversial, like back up here where we had, is there any objection to making that correction? If somebody does object, then you do have to assume a motion and vote on it and so forth. But that will just be for that little piece, just for that correction. You don't vote to approve the minutes. It's also good to notice that because the minutes were sent out, like in an email, for instance, but almost everybody does that these days, you do not need to read them. Even though it says reading and approval of the minutes, you don't actually need to read them unless one person or more asks that you do. In that case, you will need to read them. The next item of business is the hearing of reports. A question?
We do have one question in the chat whenever you want to take that.
All right, let's try it now, please.
This was back a few slides ago, I think, about the scripts. Someone's asking, doesn't the script vary depending on the member's input?
Script vary depending on members' input. Script is something, not really, because the script is done ahead of time. What you actually say at the meeting will vary because of the members' input, but you have no way to foretell that. So you put in what it is you can script and hope for the best when everything comes up, during the meeting. So a script is something written ahead of time, so you just do what you can to foretell what's going to happen. But yeah, there'll be some changes as you go along. I hope that answered it.
Yep, I'll try to convey that in the chat as well, because it looks like that person is having some technical difficulties.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. And then another question, someone, I'm not sure exactly what the question is. It says question re-approval versus voting on minutes. I don't know if Kay Hendrickson wants to describe that question in more detail.
Yeah, thanks. If I change how we do this in a meeting to not vote on minutes, I'm going to get a lot of pushback. So yeah, we always have to vote on the minutes. So what is the difference between approval and voting on the minutes, even though they've gotten them in writing ahead of time?
What they've gotten ahead of time is called the draft. They are not approved until they're at the minute or at the meeting. And if you get pushback on how you do them, refer them to Roberts. I'm sorry, I do not have the citation right now, but it is in Roberts how you do minutes. So look it up and then tell them that's the way it's supposed to be done. Okay, we better move on. Thank you though for these questions. They're good. So the next item of business is the hearing of reports, and then the chair usually is the first one to give the report, and that report should be also written down and inserted in the president's script. I want to call your attention to what happens if you have a treasurer's report. I know some of you represent organizations that do not do a treasurer's report, but many organizations do. So when it comes time for the treasurer's report, which is close to the chair's report, probably, the chair will say, to give the financial report, the chair recognizes the treasurer and insert the person's name. And then after that report, ... ask, are there any questions about the financial report? And the chair can attempt to answer them or have the treasurer attempt to answer them. And then something like this, the report, excuse me, the report is filed for audit. Do not vote to adopt or accept the treasurer's report. Do not adopt the treasurer's report. And the reason for this is that nobody else in the room has enough information to know if the treasurer's report is accurate. You're hoping so. And the treasurer says this and says that and says something else, and you trust that person, but you don't really know. So don't adopt it. What you do adopt later on is the audit or a review that's like an audit, but maybe not as official. And then you can adopt the auditor's report, say once a year or whenever you do it. And that's appropriate, but do not adopt the treasurer's report. And that's different. So you want to make sure you have that in your written script, and that is also out of Roberts. And then you'll go down your list of all the committees and the chairs who have reports. Now, if a committee makes a recommendation, it should be in the form of a motion, and you will process them. And then the person giving the report would say, by direction of the committee, I move such and such. So you don't need to wait till new business or anything. You process the motions that come from a committee right toward the end of their committee report. So that's where that happens. It's always a good idea to have what I call a side script or auxiliary script, partial script, whatever, for processing motions. To me, it's a piece of paper one page that just says what the 6 steps are, you know, who says what when in the process of making motions. And if you just have it next to you, you can pull it up at any time that you see that you are having a motion being made, and you'll know how to do that, what the steps are for going through that. And somebody else today will be telling you all about that. Okay, to hear the report of the dinner dance committee, the chair recognizes so-and-so. Next item of business is unfinished business. Now, the chair might say something like this, because you know that because you've looked at last month's minutes and agenda. You can say, when we adjourned the last meeting, the following motion was on the floor: to hold the March meeting at the aquarium. Is there any debate? This is what true unfinished business is. Something that was not reached, a motion or matter that was not reached at the last meeting. It is brought to this point of this meeting. The chair just restates the motion, which is to hold the March meeting at the aquarium, and moves right into debate again. And then it's,
We do have a question when you're ready.
okay, not quite yet. Thank you.
Okay.
But most of the time you'll say the chair is unaware of any unfinished business. So you might have the topic on your agenda, but nothing will go in it, because usually you will not have unfinished business. Most of the time when I see unfinished business listed on an agenda, it really is a report, or it's an announcement, or something else. If it's a motion, or if it's under unfinished business, it should be a motion or about to become a motion. If it's not a motion, it goes someplace else. If anything was postponed from the last meeting, it would fit in this category. And you notice it's got priority over new business, which is what it should. Stuff from last time has priority over new stuff from this time. New stuff being business, of course. So the next item of business is new business. As you see on the agenda, the first item concerns a speaker for the next meeting. The chair will entertain a motion for this, or what is the will of the assembly at this, whatever it is that the chair wants to say, to invite somebody to make a motion on that topic. And the topic is just probably a phrase listed on the agenda under new business. Again, it's a motion. New business means you're going to have a motion coming forward for this particular matter. And then, is there any other new business? And note that even if there's nothing on the agenda, you should always ask for new business, because somebody may just have a burning issue that they want to bring up. And as a member, it is their right. Okay, then you would, if that's all you have, you would have the next item of business is the hearing of announcements. And the chair might remind the members to do something like come to the next meeting a little early, or whatever you have. And then after the chair's announcements are made, you can find out if anybody else has an announcement. And you've come to the end of your agenda. So the chair says,
it's in front of this one.
is there any further
Leave that one
business?
on.
And then you wait. Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Bang, you're done. You do not need a motion for adjournment. You may have one. It's okay to make one, but you don't need to. You can, if you have nothing else to talk about in the way of business, well, let's just end the meeting. We don't have to go on forever here. If you are in the middle of something, like in the middle of new business, and you've got 3 or 4 things, but you've had enough, I mean, it's getting late and everybody's exhausted, you may make a motion to adjourn. And of course, it needs a second and a majority vote, and then the meeting is done. But when it's at the end like this, the end of the agenda, it's very simple to do it this way. Okay. Maybe we can have that question now, Josh, please.
Yeah, we have a few now. So the first one is whether motions made on behalf of a committee require a second.
They do not.
Okay. Second question, are there possible legal implications if the treasurer's report is adopted in error and turns out to have discrepancies?
Yes, you can get some problems with that. That's a legal matter sometimes, but it's not unknown that yes, some organizations have gotten in trouble if they have erroneously adopted a treasurer's report. The average organization, no, but if there's some funny stuff going on, it can cause issues, yes.
Third question, can decisions be made in committee, for instance, the place of the next fundraiser, or does it have to be brought to the members for a vote?
That depends on how the committee was formed, whether they were formed with the power or authority to make decisions like that, or whether they have to bring it back to the group. So it depends. Sorry, that's not a very, it's not a very definitive answer, but it does depend. I would say most of the time they do need to bring it back to the organization to have everything approved.
This next one's written more as a comment, but perhaps you can clarify for them. They said if a member has the right to bring up any other new business that seems contrary to keeping to the agenda.
Contrary to keeping to the agenda, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but a member has a right to bring up an issue, make a motion, for instance, or later on in the agenda, they could discuss something informally. This is a members organization, and the agenda is a roadmap, but there are times you do need to take detours.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then it looks like Deb Stewart has their hand raised.
Thank you. I was attending a political annual general meeting convention, and the leader presented his report, and then the assembly voted on the report. And it struck me as being very odd, because how could you vote down a report? You could have questions, but the report is the report is the report. If there's no recommendations, this is what I've done, this is my activities, questions. But it just struck me that it's not appropriate to say, yep, we're accepting your report, or no, we're not accepting your report.
Yeah, good
How would
question.
you deal with that?
Usually you do not adopt a committee report. It's really the recommendations that you're interested in. There are instances, rarely, where you adopt a report, and I don't know whether that was.
It would be like the president of your organization giving report of activities. This is what I've done. This is where I've gone. So that would be the analogy. You're the president of your parliamentarian group, and the group saying, we're going to vote on your report. What's the effect if they say we say no to your report, but there's no recommendations? But that's what.
Okay, no, that would be ridiculous. Not ridiculous.
Yes.
Not the right word to say, but that would frivolous is really the word I was looking at.
Exactly.
Just don't do it. Okay.
But I think the intent at some point had been to try to embarrass somebody, and I went, that doesn't make any sense.
That's not good either. That's not good.
So
Okay.
the report is the report of my activities. You can question what I did, but I think it just gets filed. But the idea of having the assembly vote on my report just seems kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. And don't allow it, or
Oh, right. I can.
certainly question.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Thank you very much. Okay, some handy phrases you may have noticed. I used a lot. The next item of business is the chair recognizes. That's how you get someone to speak. Is there any objection to? Is a good one. The unanimous consent, which David will talk more about. This is something kind of a protocol thing. When you are introducing a speaker or presenting a speaker, what do you say? Introduce or present? Well, the rule of thumb is that if you use the word introduce someone that is not known to the group, and you use the word present if that speaker is known to the group. I am pleased to present so-and-so, the mayor. Everybody knows the mayor. And if you are doing that, at any time, you say the name of the person that you are introducing or presenting at the very end. And that's their clue, their cue to stand up and come forward. So just some handy things. Okay, script design, what works best for you? I think the biggest thing in a script is that you want to differentiate between what you say versus what you do. For instance, in the opening, you will say, the meeting will come to order. Rap gavel once. Now, you want to say the words out loud, the meeting will come to order, but you do not want to say out loud, rap the gavel once. That's a direction, that's a note, it's a reminder to yourself. So you want to make sure that you differentiate in your script what you say versus what your reminders are. So use different font styles and sizes, italicize, bold, underline. Remember, you have two kinds of brackets. You have the square brackets and you have the round parentheses, and that can be used in different ways. I use the square brackets when I'm giving directions or reminders to the chair, and then I use italicize those words as well. And then for the round brackets, or the parentheses, I'll put in options. For instance, in that script I was telling you about, no motions, the motion is adopted, parentheses, lost, end of parentheses. You can use colors to help you find things or to differentiate. I would use all caps sparingly. You may have noticed that for the words for the standard order of business, I capitalized those words just because I wanted them to stand out for you. But use all caps sparingly. I find all caps, like for a whole sentence or a whole paragraph, completely annoying. So make sure you know your audience. That would be yourself most of the time. Okay, rules, you say? Members need to abide by rules for the meetings, and the chair needs to enforce them. So we better figure out what they are. This comes from the big book, Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, and the little book, Robert's in Brief. Some basics. Now, this is not the whole thing. We don't have that kind of time, but I'm going to give you some highlights. First of all, decisions are made by those who show up. We don't do proxy voting. And if you're going to miss a meeting, you don't email the president and say, I can't come, but I count me as voting yes for whatever it is. You can't do that. One person gets one vote, no matter how many hats they're wearing. They may be the vice president, they may be the chairman of a committee, they still just get one vote. The majority rules, not just the person who talks the longest and the loudest. Members have rights and responsibilities. One that comes to mind is they have the right to attend meetings. Well, it turns out that's also a responsibility of the members to attend meetings. The purpose of rules is to maintain order, and I think we know from our experience in the classroom as a student or in a family that you have to have some order to get anything done. Rules allow a group to work together to make decisions, and it ensures that the process is fair and democratic. And the beauty of Roberts, too, is that you will have this standardized format for meetings, and it will transfer from whatever organization you belong to the next organization, that it's universally used. Well, universe is kind of big. It's nationally used for sure. Okay, rules of debate. Now, you know from debate that it occurs after a motion is made. Sometimes people want to debate first and then make the motion, but you don't. Motion is made, it's seconded, then the chair repeats the motion and opens the floor for debate. That's the signal to jump in here. But speakers must get permission from the chair before speaking. They need to take turns. The chair will kind of help with that. A speaker may speak only twice on the same motion on the same day. The member who made the motion should be recognized first if that person would like to speak. All remarks go through the chair. They are not directed to other members. This keeps the temperature down. And the biggie, debate is supposed to be pro or con, for or against, in favor or opposed. This is not the time for comments or suggestions or remember when. Okay. Debate is more serious. Questions are allowed if they are relevant. Debate must be germane, that's the fancy term for related, to the motion, and you have to stay on topic. I mean, if you start out on topic and you start to drift, the chair or another member can call you to task and say, get back on topic. So more rules. Decorum, which means proper behavior. We need to be courteous and respectful, follow the golden rule, treat others as you'd like to be treated. And I'm sad to say that we are losing this. We've got to get back to the courteous and respectful stuff. We don't interrupt a speaker. There are some exceptions. We don't question the motives of another speaker. We are sure to debate issues, not personalities. If someone you are not very fond of makes a motion, look at the motion, not at the person, to decide how you're going to vote. Just because it was made by somebody you don't like doesn't mean it's a bad idea. You can certainly disagree, but don't be disagreeable. Okay, how am I doing for time? I mean, oh, good, I still have time. Are there any quick questions? Now, please put them in the chat. They are a lot shorter if you put them in the chat, and we'll be able to get to more people if we are going to do that. We're going to take some examples of debate in a minute. But do we have any burning questions, Josh?
Pat, there are no questions, but you have 5 minutes left.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Now, yes or no, look down at your, or mine's at the top. I don't know yours, it's top or the bottom. You have a bar, the microphone is on one end and the video, you know, that kind of thing. And there's one called, oh, it should be called reactions. Boy, I don't have it on mine. Do you have one that says reactions, participants? I went, okay, good. I see some heads shaking. Good. Yes or no? Do you see where you have a check mark, a green yes, and then you have an option for a red, well, a red X, or it's X on a red background? Okay, I want you to tell me when I show you the next slide, whether or not the words that are said here are appropriate debate. Okay, so play with that yes button and no button, if you would, please, so that you can turn it on and turn it off. Okay. Okay, I see a yes. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, now I'm not raise hands. I want yes or no, if you can.
I think people might be asking about how to use the functionality. So you can find it if you click on the reactions button at the bottom, and then you should see a bunch of different options. One of them should be a green check mark for yes, and the other should be a red X for no.
Thank you. Okay, it's not the end of the world if you can't do it. I just want you to give me your opinion. I won't necessarily be able to see it. We're not going to count check marks and X's. We won't have that kind of time. Okay, here we go. We're going to go do the best you can with the fun with that. All right, here we go. All right, someone says a motion's been made. It's on the floor. It's been, you know, second, it's on the floor. And that person says, I think we should meet in the park. Is that appropriate or not? Okay, I see an assortment. All right. Okay, the answer is no, that is not appropriate. And the problem is, I mean, meeting in the park might be a good idea, but to start out with, I think, is not. The motion must have been to have, well, let's go with that meeting in March in the aquarium. They must be thinking they want to meet in the park instead of the aquarium. Well, what they should be doing is making an amendment. That's one of the things I didn't tell you. So, you know, don't beat yourself up for this. We debate during debate time, but it's also the time when you can make what we call secondary motions, such as amend, refer to a committee, some of these other postponed till next time. That kind of motion you can make to help dispose of this. So what this person should do, instead of saying, I think, should be, I move to amend by striking out aquarium and inserting park. And we should go from there. So this is just air. There is nothing we would do with that. If a person says that, so what? I mean, it's really a time waster, and I'm afraid we get a bit of that. Okay, so that is a no. All right, that's a stupid idea. Okay, I see a lot of smiles. Yeah, you're going to think that occasionally, but you should never say that. That's a no for sure. You can speak against the motion. I speak in opposition because you can tell why you don't like it, but that's how you start fights right there. Well, how about this one? We tried that back in 1978 and it didn't work. That person is sort of speaking against it, but we tried it back in 1978. Is that relevant to what we're doing now? Probably not. Things have changed a whole lot since 1978. So that's a no, in my book anyway. Okay, let me go back one. I didn't want to do that. There we go. May I ask the treasurer, Mr. Chairman, how much money we have in that account? Whatever it has to do with it. Yes or no? Okay, I see mixed. Okay, yes, that's okay. If the emotion, whatever it was, must have had something to do with money. And so this person is checking out the treasury to find out if we can afford it. And so the person is not directing the question to the treasurer because that would not be proper. He or she is directing it to the chairman, and that is proper. So this is a yes. Okay, John, you're biased against anything I say. Okay, that's a no. I can tell you've got that right away. First of all, you don't refer to another member by name, by John. And here you are questioning somebody's motives. When I mentioned question the motives, you probably scratched your head. This is what I'm saying. This would be an example of questioning somebody's motive. It might be true that they don't like anything that you say, but you should not be pulling that out at this point and starting a fight. Okay.
Pat, it is time.
Okay. I'm just going to go like this. The last one is I speak in favor and would promote our organization. The point here is that there is a lot of wasted time, and that takes your marathon, takes you into marathon territory in debate. And we need to train ourselves and train others to keep focused on the pros and cons during debate and not have all this fluff. And that takes up our time. And I think that's all I had to say. That was just my summary. And thank you. And thanks for your questions. And I'm done. Have a good rest of the morning. I'm excited to see what else other people have